visual, you have that idea of something that's heavy, that's distorted, that's bumping, punching. I think it's all that. It's not only one thing, it's all different elements that come together to produce something that is, of course, underground, different and heavy. And I think that right now, when you see what's going on in the United States, I'm talking about politically, I understand why more and more kids are into industrial music, because I guess they get a kick from something completely different.
I would say the mainstream of music, all these English and American bands with just guitars, all sounding the same, and making such, for us, pretentious music, like all these pop bands of the 70s.
Well, culturally, I don't think it was in American cultural popular music during the 70s like it was for us. I think the Europeans embraced it more, particularly Germans, which sort of been pioneers of it. And the avant-garde scene in the 70s was a lot stronger in Europe, aimed more towards a sort of psychedelic experimentalism than here, which was more the guitar psychedelic experimentalism.
We discovered the synthesizers, and we thought it's wonderful to have an instrument like this, because you can have 1 million sounds and you can be much more creative.
None of us were real musicians, and the synthesizer, the computers give you an opportunity to make music, to reach creativity in music without being really a musician, which is impossible. If you don't play 5 or 10 years of guitar or drum, you won't be a good musician. We were doing a type of music that was not there then. I'm not saying that we were making revolution, but we were trying to bring music and electronic music somewhere else. And most of the electronic bands that we liked at the time were excellent music makers, but there was a lack of power, there was a lack of energy, and especially in the live shows. So we were trying to making intellectual music with our computers and keyboards and synthesizer in the studio, but we thought that we had to bring that music that we were making in the studio alive. Journalists were trying to speak about us, but they didn't know, it was nothing they knew about. So we said, okay, we better give ourselves a name to what we do. And what do? We do electronic music. And we try to reach also the mind, but the body as something real physical. So naturally it became electronic body music.
It's more difficult to play in the States than in Europe, because, for example, the PAs in the venues in general are much more designed for rock and roll acts than in Europe. Now, believe it or not, the best conditions we had recently were in Moscow. Why? Because it's a country that is just open to this type of music, and the organizers have a very young audience, because it really starts from zero, and these people are mostly interested in electronic music. So they have their head in the place where we played, called the Mechanica, which was the name of the venue. They're a brand new PA with young technicians, and it was perfectly designed for this type of music. So for us, that was the perfect place to land and to make a concert.
These artists don't make a living doing music. There's very few that do, and the few that are obviously making less. And it's also hurting record stores, record labels, distributors. In the last few years, in the last 5 or 6 years, 40% of the business, 40% of the jobs in the business have disappeared. So it's not a victimless crime by doing illegal downloads and CD burning.
I'm sure that the major companies are just lying about the figures. I think that downloading is probably killing a little bit I don't know the percentage, but it's not 50% or 60% like they try to say. I think they do a bad job. They sign bad band. They try to go mainstream with all these what do you call it, Idol, American Idol, and all that.
The excessive downloading will certainly prevent lots of interesting artists to emerge because simply all the music that is downloaded won't give them the money they need to keep on working.
These bands sell anywhere from 3,000 to 50,000 copies. That's about the upside potential. Places like Best Buy and Target, Circuit City, they would sell hundreds of thousands of copies.
So we are maybe quite happy that we are one of amongst 10 made it to a certain level that they can tour the States or the Europe. The labels really work hard with 6, 7 bands, which most of the indie labels has, only with maybe 7 enough to cover costs.
If a band or an artist doesn't have a club hit, they can't sell like they used to. In the early days, in the 80s, I think more of this music was heard on radio, MTV, video channels, and a lot of people just used to listen to this music at home. So a lot of industrial music was noisier or more soundtrack-like, but like over the last 20 years, the beat has become more important. The music is darker than mainstream music, but there's hardly any lyrics whatsoever that tell children or adults to go out and shoot people or themselves.
Rather like it'd be our message than say going to some like death metal or something very sort of satanic and negative or whatever. Ours is a positive one.
I'll address the indie scene because there's lots of things that aren't accepted by the mainstream, and things keep getting worse all the time. If you want to talk about mainstream music, everything's against you. You can't get played on MTV, you can't get played on commercial radio. Big conglomerates own all the radio stations, they own all the chains, so that's another story. But I think, and I'm pretty sure, why industrial music isn't accepted in the indie scene is because of what people in the goth industrial scene wear. They just think they're a bunch of freaks.
Ago we did a party for Jerry Buss, the owner of the Lakers. So we had to do like some special pastries, and unfortunately we ran out of pastries in the middle of the day of the party. And thank God we had some stuff left over in the refrigerator that I was able to bring out and finish up. Co-workers and myself, we put our tips together during about like half a year. And we bought ourselves a nice, 2-deck CD player. When my boss leaves, I just take that out and I'm like cranking it up. Since we have the door closed, I can crank it up as much as I want and nobody hears it, I've been working there for like 15 years now. That tells you, you gotta be liking what you do and where you're doing it in order to do that, Yeah, it's a paycheck, and I understand that, but it's also a little more than just that. I love what I do. I basically do. I would have liked my hobby, which is the club business, to be my full-time job, but then it wouldn't have been a fun hobby.
Perversion. We met because we were really, really drunk, and Frank was dancing in a mosh pit, and I was with my best friend Gladys, and I was leaning against the wall. Gladys was in front of me, and I don't really know what happened, but I just know he ended up pushing her. She flew across the room, and that's how we met. Frank is 100% dedicated to the music. I'm not. I go to clubs to dance and listen to the music, and once I walk out of the club, that music no longer exists. I'm into politics, and at home, usually I'll be watching TV. He'll be listening to his music on his earphone. I don't think the difference in our race or our background has affected the relationship at all.
Actually, it made it stronger, I think.
Honestly, what I'm getting out of this relationship is a lot of love. A lot. I didn't have that much male love. That's what I get from him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a fetish? And if yes, what is it?
High heels for me. And
high heels for him, and unfortunately I can't wear them.
In red underwear.
Yeah, red underwear.
That's pretty.
Wow. I guess if I could be honest, it would be my husband's penis. I love it. That's about it. There's not really anything else.
She had to say it.
Welcome to the very first Das Bunker Presents Industrial Music Fest.
I don't think enough people felt that anybody gave a shit enough about this scene to make something like an industrial fest. I think if they did like a synth pop fest, they would have probably felt that they had more luck because there's more people who listen to that. I think we're just few and far between, and trying to get everyone together, they probably thought it was just too much of a hassle. Like, oh, well, we don't know if it's going to turn out really well. Because a lot of clubs that branch off and do the experimental thing, they don't do very well. You know, they have a hard time, like, even getting people to come out to the clubs because everyone's like, oh, I'm not going to go.
Well, she was very good this year, and I promised her I would take her. She wanted to come along, and we had to put earplugs, and if she doesn't like it, we'd take a break. But she's very excited to be here with my grown-up friends, so she can't come with me to clubs. She's too young. Are you excited?
Yes. Are you having a good time, sweetie?
Yes.
Es una buena manera de traer aquí la música a Los Ángeles para personas que en verdad les gusta, ¿no? Y me parece muy bien el festival aquí en Los Ángeles.